Tuning in to the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Ackerman. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hello, AfterBuzzers. You are listening to the AfterBuzz After Show for Mulaney, the brand new TV show. This is the Season 1, Episode 1 pilot. I'm your host, Kylie Hodges, and joining me today,
Pegah Rad, hello.
And hi, everybody. It's Nando Velasquez.
Thank you guys so much for joining me
And
today.
we're totally using SNL theme intro because
Yeah.
it was like, what can we use? What can we use? But
it's only appropriate when we have two people who are and or were a part of SNL at one point.
Yes, and the executive producer is from SNL, and
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot of SNL, and actually 3 people if you include Martin Short.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, we're going way back.
Yeah, he had a stint on SNL. Yes, he did.
Yeah. So I noticed at the end of the show that Broadway Video produced this show, and Lorne Michaels is executive producer. So there's a lot of SNL influence on the show, which is exciting. I think we can all say at one point in our lives we've loved SNL.
Loved it for a while,
Everyone
yeah.
can relate to it. But this show is called Mulaney. It's based on Jon Mulaney's life. Don't know how real it is. But he's a young
There
comic.
was a man named Jon Mulaney.
Yes,
and he
there
lived
is
in
a
New
man.
York.
Yes.
And he lived in New York. He lived in New York. Yes.
And he's in New York. He's an up-and-coming comic. He just finds out that he got a job interview with a legend of a comedian who we find out is kind of a weirdo. Lou Cannon, played by Martin Short. And tell me your initial thoughts on the show.
Well, I mean, the very
Overall.
opening was Seinfeld, like, the stand-up comedy, the dark kind of, background, which, was it his living room he was talking out of? Right?
Yeah, it was the set from
set
his show.
Okay.
Oh.
In the background with the lights out and just
Yeah.
a spotlight on him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. I guess I was paying more attention to not
To
that.
him. To him.
Yeah.
So yeah, right off the bat, Seinfeld. And then I liked the beat of the show. It was kind of quick, witty.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's very Seinfeld or Louis C.K. in the sense that you open up with a monologue, you put some monologues here and there. I mean, what's different, what I noticed and you noticed too, is instead of doing it over at a comedy club, like, for example, Louis C.K. does his over at the Comedy Cellar, and Seinfeld, I don't think we ever knew exactly where he was doing his set, but it was obvious in front of an audience on a stage. Mulaney is doing it on his set of his show with his living room or whatever, the set in the background, which a little different, a little off-putting. It doesn't really put him as a stand-up comic. It puts him more like he's telling, it almost makes it feel like he's telling his own story from the set of his TV show.
Yeah, and
Right.
that, I just realized that that's not the only time they break the fourth wall.
Yeah.
In this show, there's a moment where John is on the phone with Donna, Lou Cannon's assistant, and he picks up and answers it, and he says, "No, you're not on speaker," and then we realize that she tells him she wants to be on speaker, which is kind of funny because I'm assuming they're playing up the fact that she would have to be on speaker.
Donna will always be on speaker.
Yeah.
I think it's a given conclusion that we will never see Donna ever on this show, that she will always be on speakerphone no matter what. And they'll probably find some really interesting ways to always have her voice somewhere. Like maybe they'll even have a scene. I could see them having a scene someplace like at her apartment, with Lou Cannon there, and she's like in the other room just yelling or something.
That's very Home Improvement. Remember Wilson? You only saw his eyes over the fence.
Absolutely. But the thing also about this show is it is incredibly Seinfeld. Even not so much his delivery during his monologues, but when he was in that opening scene in the doctor's waiting room, he had this delivery talking a lot like it was a very Seinfeld Costanza moment between him and Motif. Motif kind of comes across a bit as Costanza. Jane comes across as Elaine.
Yeah.
Andre is kind of more Newman. He's a little bit of Kramer, but I think he's a little more Newman than Kramer.
Totally Newman.
Maybe Elliott Gould's character is more the Kramer
Kramer,
character.
I see that. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of similarities to Seinfeld. He's pulling a lot from Seinfeld on this pilot.
I am not well versed in Seinfeld, but I've seen enough episodes that the more you say these things, the more I'm
Yeah,
like, oh
and
my
even
God,
like it
is
takes
like
place
Seinfeld.
in New York. It's in late 20s. It's coming of age. I could tell. I'm pretty sure by the exteriors that they shot in New York on location. It looks like, and I would assume that this takes place in the Village as opposed to Seinfeld. I'm from New York originally, so
Okay.
I can definitely relate to this. A lot of New York shows are actually set up in either the Upper West Side or the Upper East Side, but from what I could tell from the exteriors, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, it looks very much like they're in the Village. I could see them being in the Village or Brooklyn.
How does the Village play into and compared to the West Village? Or I'm sorry, what did you say? The West.
Well, the Village could be the West Village or East Village.
Is it like hip or?
Yeah, the Village is a little more hip. You know, if you're in your 20s and just starting out, you're more likely to either want to live in the Village because you could probably afford it a little bit better down there. It's a lot more clubs and NYU's down there, or probably live in Brooklyn. But again, the exteriors look more of that. Upper West Side, I think people are a little more established. They have careers or they have money.
Yeah.
It still looks really hip and you want to be there, but it's a little less affordable. So I
Okay.
could see this being more of a Village type of comedy
Very
for those New
interesting.
Yorkers who know their New York. Yeah.
I love Jane. I feel
Yeah?
like all of us can relate to somebody. Like we
Oh, I
know
was-
somebody like Jane, like that.
Have you been a crazy ex-girlfriend? Because
No,
I'll
I
own up
haven't.
right now. I have done a few of those things. Maybe
I mean,
not
I've
as
never,
invasive
I've
as
never
her.
tapped into an email or anything,
No.
but I feel like we all have a girlfriend that kind of resembles Jane or reminds
Sure.
us of her.
Yeah.
But I like her energy. I like her craziness. What is her occupation? Is she a trainer? Did I miss
Oh.
that?
I don't know if they did
I
they
read
mention it.
that, but I don't know if she actually covered it on the show.
If you read it, I don't think it was mentioned on the pilot
Okay.
yet,
Well,
but it's
then, yeah.
possible. Yeah.
I'm going to label her as professional crazy ex-girlfriend.
yeah.
Yeah,
She's
and
so
she
funny.
seems to have a weird relationship with Mulaney as well,
She
because they had that
does.
one little hug that was really weird.
Yeah,
You know?
it makes me. When that happened, I was wondering, why is she even a part of this? Then is she better friends with Motif, and so she's kind of along for the ride?
She was going to show Motif her butt, so
yeah.
who knows?
Maybe he's pursuing her, and so.
Well, you know, in Seinfeld, Elaine was someone that Jerry used to date. Before the show technically started airing, they had a history, and then they became friends. But with the exception of I think one episode, I don't think they ever really had sex. They had sex once to save the friendship. That was the big through line. But so I have a feeling Jane is just, you never know, but it seems like Jane is just more that friend. Maybe they dated. Maybe we'll learn
Yeah.
some more. But I think there was more to that little weird hug
Yeah.
than it meets the eye.
Seems like that's a teaser for what's to come
Yeah,
for the rest of the
Yeah,
season.
especially with a crazy ex-girlfriend like Jane. Wow.
She's over the top, but I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
I think it's this show seems like it's meant to be over the top. I mean, even with the way John delivers every line, he's very like, "Oh my God, this
Yeah.
is everything that's happening," even if he's just talking about what he ate.
Right.
But that's John Mulaney's shtick too. If you guys are familiar with his stand-up, he is very much a storyteller, and he's so dramatic, and everything is very expressive and over
Yeah.
the top. So
Right.
it's very much like him. Now, is he still a writer on SNL? Do you guys know?
No, because he moved
not.
out here. He moved out here to L.A.
Okay.
To do this show, and Nasim Pedrad left SNL last season to come to L.A. as well.
Wow.
So they are, but Lorne Michaels is executive producing the show. So I'm guessing he's doing that from New York, or he's probably was here in L.A. for
Sure.
a bit of the tapings, but
Yeah.
now I'm sure he's in New York mainly for SNL. I mean, one thing to note about Mulaney as well. I mean, there's his stand-up. If you look up, you could find stuff on YouTube. He was a writer on SNL. A lot of people seem to refer to Stefan. He was, responsible for writing all those really crazy
Yeah.
Stefan lines. That's one of the things.
Oh,
And
that's great.
everybody on the show, whoever talks about Mulaney, always raves about how incredibly talented he is. I also remember him from Best Week Ever. He was one of the talking heads on Best Week
Was
Ever.
he?
Yeah, he
Oh, I
definitely
used
was.
to love Best Week Ever.
Yeah, so he started. I don't know if he started out on Best Week Ever, but he definitely was there before SNL. So that might have been his Lou Cannon type show, that he got his
Oh,
start
there you
on,
go.
for
There
all
you
I
go.
know. But yeah, so he definitely has been around a bit. So
let's talk about Martin Short on the show.
Oh, love him.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, go on.
I mean, he kind of plays himself, I feel like. I don't know, that eccentric, crazy energy and
Yeah.
really self-absorbed though in the show,
Totally.
right? So these
So
are
in
the
other
Emmys in
words-
the mirror you can see too.
Yeah.
so in other words, Martin Short is.
he's
self-
playing Martin Short's playing Martin Short. It seems like
It's
he
funny,
plays
it's a gag.
he plays that oblivious character so
Right,
well. Different versions of it, but he does
Yeah.
that showboaty I'm the most important person in the room.
Right.
Everybody look at me type of character. He
And
does
that,
so
like
well.
when he crosses his eyes, it's so funny that when the game show lights came on,
Yeah.
he's like, ah.
He was
Yeah.
drunk on the power of hosting
Yes.
whatever was in front of him, that he was not absorbing what Mulaney was saying. to
Right.
him. But in the end.
Who do you think he's playing anybody in particular?
Oh boy.
Do you think he's basing that on somebody? Because I have a thought that I want to see I want to open it up first before I say who I think he's playing.
Well, during the game show thing, I thought they were just making fun of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And Regis used to host that, right?
Regis.
That's what I was going to say. I was
Really?
Gonna say,
Yeah.
I was going to
Regis?
say I think he's definitely playing up Regis.
Totally.
Absolutely
I see
playing up
that.
Regis.
I totally see that.
Yeah.
I know.
I love him. I want to hug him.
Regis.
But it's funny. Regis with the I don't want to bash on Regis. Regis is actually really, really talented. It's just that at his age he forgets. I remember watching him with Kathy Lee or with Kelly, and he just forgets things all the time. But he plays it off really well. But again, he plays that whole what is that whole it's all about me type of character really, really well.
I never put those two together, but I can totally see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I liked the apartment. I'm assuming Luke Cannon lives there. The office
That
meeting where
office?
he had.
Oh, yeah.
It was very it reminded me of Barney Stinson's apartment from How I Met Your
Yeah.
Mother for some reason. Kind of like this bachelor pad that's probably got weird hidden robotic high-tech things that no normal person would have in their house, but he has it just because he can have it.
Yeah,
But
He's
instead
lit.
of it being sexual, it's all about him. So it's
Exactly.
probably just mirrors popping all over the place so he can look at himself.
Yeah,
wherever he
statues
or
wants.
of
he has
himself.
cardboard cutouts
Right.
of himself, how we saw at that event. Take a photo with my cardboard cutout, and everybody goes crazy.
I know. I was like, come on.
He's
Audience
that big of a
applause.
sensation.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about Nasim Pedrad. So she plays Jane, and you love Jane. Did
love
you
Jane.
say your thoughts on Jane?
I didn't. I mean, I love Nasim Pedrad. She was one of my favorite people on SNL. I mean, she's beautiful, and she plays really, her Kardashian character from SNL is like a
Yes,
favorite.
she's the best.
And I think she was never really. She was just a solid performer. She ever. It's kind of tough being a woman on SNL opposite people like Kristen Wiig because they're just stand out.
Phenomenal.
But I think Nasim Pedrad was always a reliable, funny woman, and she could play so much. She was very versatile and could definitely fill in the space and play a variety of different characters.
Yeah.
So it is really nice to see her play, especially this is such a strong woman character.
Yeah, she's unique.
Yeah, very unique. So I think it's really awesome, and she's the only woman, really, other than Donna, the only woman on this show. So she definitely has an
You're right.
opportunity to shine. Kind of in the same way, Julia Louis-Dreyfus also came from SNL. She was in SNL in the early '80s during the Dick Ebersol era, and I think Seinfeld was her big. She did I believe, a TV show or two before Seinfeld, but that was her big break. And again, she was the one woman on Seinfeld,
go.
so
There's
she
similarity.
really got to. Who knows? Maybe she wouldn't have been on Veep. Maybe she wouldn't have gotten shows like that if it wasn't for what she established on Seinfeld.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot banking on this show for her since she quit SNL, but I think that this will probably have a good run. I think that this pilot overall set up a lot for us.
Yeah.
So I hope that they take what they've given us and really run with it and give us a solid first season.
Yeah.
Now, people are pretty familiar with Nasim, but Motif, his name is Seaton Smith.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we looked him up, and looks like this is his first time on TV.
Yeah, newcomer.
He's a fun character. I think
Yeah.
he's my favorite.
He's cool. He's like the successful comedian that's kind of made it and is more comfortable in the skin as a comedian.
Well, I don't know if he's
Well,
made it. He's just got a
More
joke about a
than-
punchline.
Right.
He's like a one-hit wonder right now, and I
Yeah.
love that. The problem bitch joke
Right.
was an ongoing gag throughout this episode. I think it was my favorite thing.
It wasn't that funny for me until they had the payoff at the end with
Jane.
Jane's email that she was reading from her boyfriend about and he got his punchline
Yeah.
and she got closure.
I think that's what
Yeah.
they're going for in the show. Like, I think that the show admits that it's giving you something kind of dumb.
Yeah.
But it's like, just roll with it. We know that this is silly. But in the end,
Well-
it'll be even funnier. That's how I
No,
took
I
it.
agree. And again, I kind of feel like in a way he's that Costanza character, at least in the very beginning. It was like a show about nothing. Just your
Yeah.
typical two guys chatting about God knows what. And it's
Yeah.
like confusing as all heck. But there was some payoffs, which are really, the payoffs really, like that payoff I thought really hit. That was one of the strongest
Totally.
moments
Yeah.
on the show for me personally.
Totally.
Yeah.
Sells out t-shirts saying problem bitch, and now he's famous.
Yeah.
Good for him. Then there's one last character we haven't mentioned was Oscar, Mulaney's neighbor.
Oh, we also didn't mention Andre, but we could talk
Oh,
about
you're
Oscar.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. Okay, well, Oscar's it seems like he's a much smaller part than Andre. But he's a neighbor. He's an older gentleman who pays $80 a month for rent. So, like you mentioned earlier, it's probably rent control. God bless rent control.
And I was fortunate. I actually had a rent control department in New York, so I can relate. And
wow.
the building I was in, was going co-op. So half the people in the place had rent control, and the other half were people who were rich and could afford to buy into a co-op. Wow. But even looking at the apartment and his demeanor, he really reminded me of the kinds of people who would have a rent control apartment and just squat. Because when you have a great apartment in New York, I mean, we see all these sitcoms like How I Met Your Mother and Friends, and we see all these beautiful New York apartments, and you realize that, you couldn't afford that unless you had like a trust fund and maybe more than one trust fund and won the lottery. You couldn't afford anything that big unless you score a rent-controlled apartment. And I think it was really funny because I think Elliott Gould, who's amazing, played it really, really well.
I have rent control in West Hollywood, and life is good.
I have rent control here too, actually, and life's pretty good.
Yeah, I can relate to Oscar.
Not $80 a month.
No, that's
he
must have been there since 1900.
Well, the place I got, like my roommate had the rent control, but he was there from like the 1970s, so it was a ridiculous price. Yeah, in the Upper West Side, and back when that neighborhood was more dodgy. Like if you remember the what's the name of that guy? The Death Wish movies. They all took place like in the Upper West Side in that neighborhood back in the 70s because it was really that bad back then that they set the scene there, and now it's all gentrified and upper class and everything.
He's like the OG of hipsters. He moved in before the hipsters even thought about gentrifying that place. Good for him.
It was sweet. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, so he's a fun character. Go on.
And I like how Mulaney, he kind of confides in him. They have little heart-to-hearts and the whole tea, what was it, the tea tray? That
the tea tray from Turkey, that whole story.
So I think that's going to be cool to see him kind of interact with him, too.
He's like his crazy neighbor that teaches him life lessons. Yeah. I wish I had one of those. And then we have Andre the drug dealer, played by Zack Pearlman.
The weed guy.
The weed guy,
baby.
that's right.
Yeah. I mean, he's a drug dealer, but the weed guy.
He's a well-dressed drug dealer. You know, when he had his first entrance, I thought, I never think to see a drug dealer in a sweater vest and like a corduroy
kind of a hipstery drug dealer, that's for sure. Weed guy.
What is his situation where everybody hates him? Doesn't it seem, because he's introduced by Jon saying, bad news, Andre's here. Yeah. So obviously Jon isn't a fan.
Well, I think he's like, I don't think you want, I don't know, but I don't think you want your weed guy to always be hanging out with you.
True.
It's like,
he's a little clingy.
He's a little clingy, It's kind of like, it's that guy that you just like, he just slips you his stuff and then he leaves. And this is the guy who wants to hang out, and he's kind of creepy and he's a little arrogant and he's played by Zack Pearlman, who I know he's a really awesome guy. I've met him before. Had him on my another show that I was on. He's done the Virginity hit, which I love. That was an Adam McKay movie. Will Ferrell, Adam McKay produced that movie. Okay. And he was also in the U.S. version of The In-Betweeners on MTV. Yeah, so it was a really funny guy, really good guy. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to seeing more scenes with him.
He's very over the top with his character, but I like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so. The show needs... I think that's what will make this show great, is like really over the top characters, because that's what's going to make it stand out.
Yeah.
On top of it kind of seems like Jane is totally milking the fact that she's a cute girl. Yeah. She gets her way with Motif by saying, I'll show you my butt. She gets the email address or password for her ex-boyfriend by just telling Andre she wants to hang out with him or whatever. He's like fawning over her.
What was that password? It was a really funny password. I didn't write it down.
Well, the first one was I'll show you my butt. Or that was Motif's.
That was Motif's version. No, but she had a password. It was funny. It was something like
Don Cheadle something?
No, it was like it was something like Bieber something, but it wasn't Bieber. But it was a celebrity name.
Yeah.
It was a weird celebrity name.
Funny stuff. I really like the crazy ex-girlfriend stuff.
Seriously, I love it.
Hysterical.
Pulling out the plants. Like, I needed justice. They can't enjoy these flowers. I planted these.
So, I feel like this is a decent pilot. I think it has a lot of potential. I'm excited for the rest of the season. Do you guys want to go into predictions?
okay.
Yeah, it was sudden, but yeah, sure. If you
No,
want.
too soon.
No,
Too
well,
soon?
I
Do you
was
have
gonna say.
last thoughts?
I was gonna say before that. I mean, what were the funny? Without like going into jokes because we can't really do them justice. What were the funny bits that you thought were really, really good? I mean, Problem Bitch was one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote down. I thought it was really funny when Luke Cannon said he won an Emmy and a daytime Tony. We
Yeah.
were like, daytime Tony.
All
There
three
is
of
no
it took
such
us a second. Yeah. I was like, wait, a daytime. Oh, a Tony?
Yeah. Actually, the part that made me laugh the most was really after the whole him getting shafted at the Marsha benefit, with the cardboard cutout. And when Donna calls, he said, "Did Cardboard Luke kill an escort? Is that why you need me?" And Donna saying that she got promoted. She was a writer before she got promoted. That was all really funny.
I think also the fact that they just made up butt jokes a lot throughout the
They
show.
did.
We're constantly referencing Mulaney getting his prostate exam, and then the doorman seeing him
Right. Like
bent over getting his mic pack taken off.
First of all, the doorman, like, he wasn't even his doorman because he didn't have a ability. It was Luke
you're right.
Cannon's doorman. So who do you just walk up to I mean, look, I'm from New York, but I don't even do that.
No.
It's like, do you walk up to a doorman and go, "Oh, I had an interesting day. I had a prostate exam,"
Yeah.
And then the payoff, of course, worked out when Mulaney was bent over getting the mic pack taken off, and the doorman just happens to be walking by.
eating like a slushie or whatever that was.
Yeah, whatever that was.
Well, that was a very Seinfeld moment, I'd say.
Again,
Right?
Well, the thing with Seinfeld's always, I think, the callbacks.
Yeah.
Something looks like it's nothing, and then all of a sudden everything comes together. Now that's always been the brilliant part of Seinfeld, when everything comes together at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Very womp womp.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, problem bitches for sure. The get on your elbows thing. Those were the ones that I wrote down multiple times. I like that in his stand-up, John referred to himself as a gay child or an old queen at the at recess when
Yes.
he'd be
as
told
a
to play
kid.
dodgeball, and he's like, "No, I'd rather sit over here and
Yeah.
yell at my birds." Or
I could relate to the whole the opening monologue with the subway. Like
the
like
running.
when you're in New York and you're like running for the train because someone else is kind of running. But as far as I know, at least, I've done that before, just instinctively. And it's just a funny twist that the girl was trying to get away from him, and he just thought she was going for the train, so he ran with her. I actually love that. That was an awesome bit. You know what I also wrote down here that I loved when Jane talked about how Christian Bale can go crazy on set.
yeah,
And people just think he's an artist, but then Katherine Heigl just is a little bit difficult, and
she's
dead.
gone.
She's done.
Yeah.
that's very funny and very true.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's all I wrote on as far as stuff that stood out.
Mulaney's not alone. I've definitely lied to the doctor as well to get around something else that I
Yeah.
had to talk about.
Really?
I've never said I pee 11 times in one day. It's like, come on, let's be realistic. But, what? Obviously, they needed a good bit. So, yeah, this was a fun show. Did you say you had news and gossip?
No.
Well, then we don't have news and gossip for you guys.
don't
Probably
have
because it's
that.
just the first episode. We'll go into
have
predictions
more, yeah.
now.
And now, your AFTERBUZZ TV predictions.
All right. Pegah, why don't you go first?
I feel like Luke Cannon he'll keep his craziness, but they may have him and Mulaney might have a heart-to-heart at some point.
Okay.
I feel like they'll kind of connect at some point. He'll come down and set aside his crazy ego for a second and kind of connect at some point.
I like
don't
that.
know.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, you know.
I mean, I've never done predictions. I can't think of predictions for a show like this. It's so
hard.
weird.
It is
It's
hard.
so
It is.
weird. But I'll definitely say, we'll never see Donna. Donna will just
No.
be a voice
Right.
from now on. Motif kind of being a stand, and I wonder if he'll be competition for Mulaney. That might be. I don't see that being a theme, but I could see one episode where Motif is funnier than Mulaney to Luke Cannon, and he's struggling with that. I think Andre is going to get creepier and creepier toward Jane, and I for some reason I just don't see Oscar leaving his apartment either. I think he's going to be kind of like the neighbor in Home Improvement who's always just sticking out. I think Oscar's just going to live in that really cool rent-controlled apartment. And
Always
never
in a
leave.
bathrobe.
Yeah.
Over
Yeah.
regular clothes.
Oh,
With his
yeah.
fern.
Always with that really interesting. I don't know if that was a bathrobe, but that
it was some sort of
interesting
smoking
ensemble
jacket.
type
Yeah.
thing. Yes, exactly. So.
I predict that Jane and John are going to have some weird, maybe not a love story, but I think they'll just have sex at some point during the first season.
To save the friendship,
I feel,
kinda like
yeah,
Seinfeld.
or some sort of accidental,
Yeah.
drunken, who knows, some weird consequence that happens with John and Jane. All right. Well, I think this is a fun pilot, and I think it'll be a great first season. And thank you guys so much for joining me. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Pegah Rad, P-E-G-A-H-R-A-D.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Nandovel, Nandovel, and here at AfterBuzz for a bunch of other shows, including Walking Dead next week. Homeland started today as well. I'm excited about that. Blacklist and Scorpion.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the Kylie Hodges. And you can also find me on a bunch of other AfterBuzz TV shows, including MTV's Faking It, A to Z, and I don't even remember the other one. I do a lot of AfterBuzz shows, so just keep tuning in. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you next week.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.